Welcome to Power Up, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts, Nat and Kristen, as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
So I was looking through our comments on our podcast, which, by the way, you can do if you're listening. You can apparently comment. I don't know how you can do it, but you can, and people do. And one of the comments that I saw, and it was actually from a while ago, and she said, "Have you heard about ask versus guess culture?" Which, of course, I had not. So I went and did a very quick Google and then sent a link to Kristen going, "We need to talk about this. This is really interesting." But did not look any further into it and have now a very vague recollection of what it means. So, Kristen, do you want to kickstart this week's podcast by telling us what ask versus guess culture is?
Let me give a little context. I'm going to throw back to 2007, where someone posted on Ask Metafilter. This is like, think Reddit 1.0, okay? They had a friend who kept inviting herself to stay at their New York City apartment. And the poster was
Was that person me? I'm like, can I stay? Can I stay?
no. Yeah, that's right. It was yeah, who wouldn't want to go to New York, right? And have free accommodation. Anyway, the poster, the New York city apartment rentee owner was frustrated because they'd already made excuses to avoid hosting her once, but now she was asking again. She did not get the hint. They wanted advice, posting on this Ask Metafilter, how to say no without being rude. So someone posted a response, and this is the response that's gone viral and created this ask versus guess culture. And she said, this is basically a classic case of ask meets guess culture. She explained that some people are raised to think it's fine to ask for anything and accept they might not go. They're like, what is it? You can't get what you don't ask for? While others are raised to only ask if they're sure the answer will be yes. And so the friend asking to stay was an ask culture person, was possibly fine with getting a no, but why not ask? And the poster, feeling pressured and making excuses, was a guess culture person. So explained why they were frustrating each other. Of course, also why also it went viral because everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, I so relate to this. I'm this in this context, or I'm that in that context." And people have been referencing it since 2007.
It really reminds me of something that I learned on my favorite research channel, Instagram. And it was someone talking about, oh, those neurotypicals, they do this weird conversation thing that's really confusing. Like one of them might say, "What game are you playing?" And a lot of neurodivergent people will go into a lot of detail about the game they're playing to answer the question. But what a lot of neurotypical people mean when they ask is, "Can I play?" And they're like, they're not even asking if they can play. They're just saying, "What is the game?" And I meant to interpret that and figure out not to give them a 10-minute lecture on the game, but that it was an ask to be included in the game. And this sort of feels like that too. And we talk about it a lot with culture as well, like cultural norms around communication. They're just these unspoken, unwritten rules that when you're not aware of the rules, you're constantly baffled. And this feels like a really interesting one where I'm sure none of us got told the kind of upbringings we had, and like in this household it's offensive to say no, but we adopt them, and then when you clash against someone else where they have come from a totally different background, we're like playing by different rules and very confused by each other.
I couldn't agree more. Let's go into ask culture and guess culture, but to the cultural new, not only is it the families we're raised in, but it's cultural influences as well. Even at a national level, we're going to Japan this year, and it seemed to be speaking of Instagram, I must have clicked on something because now every third reel is on tips about Japan, and half of them are all of the cultural no-nos and all of the things that you can misstep on. There's so many things that we can do to offend others in Japan. There's so many unspoken cultural rules, and I think equally, some cultures, are really clear. Are um, very foster really direct communication. You quite often say, I don't know, Germans, for example, might not be, it's stereotypical, might not be humorous and ask directly for things. So even at a national level, and heritage is really interesting as well. But let's go into ask culture. This is like direct requests, direct answers. A yes is a yes, a no is a no. So you might, hey, can you help me with this X? Could be at work, could be at home. You ask, they answer, everyone moves on. What's guest culture, Nat?
Well, I was actually thinking with that ask culture, I feel like there is another element to it that a no is not a rejection. There is no emotions tied to a no. So, like, and I've noticed this even since Kyla moved in, that if her, like, for example, her auntie said a while ago, hey, can you look after your nephew? I want to go on holiday. And Kyla was really comfortable saying, no, that doesn't work for us. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure how well that would go down in my family. Like, I feel like in my family, I'm more of a guest culture. So, yeah, it's just interesting. There's no offense taken and there's no
I
like
like that because there
expectation
is rejection because they're rejected all the time, but there's no offense taken as a result. Like,
and there's no emotion tied to it.
that's right. They're inviting either a yes or a rejection, a no.
Yeah, but I think rejection even in itself is like a loaded word where it's actually just a I can or I can't or I want to or I don't want to. And there actually isn't a rejection there. It's just like you're an autonomous person and I'm going to ask you and I'd like clarity either way. And I feel like we try and say that a lot at Power Suit because I feel like having grown up, which I'll explain soon, in a guest culture, I feel like I find it really frustrating because I'm like, just say, like, I don't care either way. I just like to know the answer. And I also don't want to put you out if you don't want to. So a guess culture, which I feel like I've probably grown up in more, but it'd be interesting to see if my parents think that's true. Um, because I think reading between the lines, there is emotion tied to the no, or there is a sense of rejection, or a sense that it's rude or it's uncomfortable that what it creates is an environment where you kind of only ask for something if you're pretty sure the answer will be yes. So, what you do instead is you hint, you nudge, you test the waters to see if someone will actually offer without you having to ask. So, rather than saying, can you help me with this difficult project? You might say, oh, I'm really struggling with this project and hope that someone can go 2 steps forward and go, I can help you with that. And it's kind of one of those really ambiguous, we create this really ambiguous communication where we leave other people guessing, which I suppose is why it's called guess culture, what we actually want from it. But our motivation or the way we've been taught is that a no damages the relationship or it's a rejection or it makes everyone uncomfortable and we probably feel uncomfortable with it. So we kind of dance around topics to avoid an outright no.
I was trying to think of some examples and, I keep coming back to this, and I don't know if this embodies guest culture. But I think in many instances, there is a power imbalance, and I don't mean power in the sense of, have and have not. I mean power as in there's someone in the know or with the asset or with the thing, and there's someone that's in need of something, and so there's almost a power imbalance, and depending on that power imbalance, I was wondering if, that influenced if it became a guess culture or a guess, instance or ask instance, and I only say that because, um maybe not, I don't know, like, for example, like, say someone has got a private jet and we wanna go to Hawaii, we probably wouldn't ask the person that owns the private jet, "Hey, can we go on your private jet?" This is someone with a power, like, we're in a
No,
power
because we were care about climate change, Kristen. We're not gonna go on a private jet when we can go on a
just bear with me here, but we might hint that we're going to Hawaii, like, we might.
I think you were raised in a guest culture.
Um, was I possibly raised in a guest culture, but I was trying to think of instances, and it does it there's something power and not in there, and then, of course, caring about it.
I think that's why I say I think you were, raised in a guest culture because I think people who are asked in a raised in an ask culture don't feel that power imbalance. They're like, "I'm gonna ask and you'll say no, and that's fine, onwards." Like,
Can we go
I
on your private jet to Hawaii?
yeah, and then I as the owner would be like, "No, no," and I don't actually think it is as straightforward as no. It's just more like, "No, I don't rent it out for that," or "No, or it's gonna cost
Do you
X."
know
Like,
what?
there's just no
Yeah.
emotion around it.
I agree, but you know what's interesting, and this is why I made this correlation, which clearly was messy, but I have no problem
I don't know.
asking.
I'm gonna
I
ask
have
people.
I have no problems asking people, to do something when I'm in a position of power or authority, right? Like, I don't have issues asking, for something when that is their job or they are tasked to help me or asking my kids to do stuff. There is no guessing in those environments. I'm in a position of power and authority.
But that's what the first point of guest culture is you only ask if you're pretty sure the answer will be
Yeah,
yes.
right. Yeah.
So I think that is a typical example of guest culture, and I like, honestly, so I love the example of a private jet because I think we should start asking around, and there's actually some fabulous people doing some experiments, like exposure therapy on rejection and just asking random strangers for all sorts of stuff and really shocking themselves by how much people say yes to things and get really excited about including them. But I think the challenge here is, like, there are okay, so do we wanna list some other examples? Because I feel like I had one in a couple in the holidays actually where, we were all staying up the coast and various people, would say, "We'd like to pop in." My guest culture background made me really uncomfortable saying, "Actually, I don't want people arriving all day every day, and, like, we wanted to have some downtime, blah, blah, blah." So my instinct is to make up an excuse. Kyla gets the same message and she goes, "We'll just tell everyone to come on one day and done." Like, that's we really want them to come. This is what works for us. Tick. Whereas I get like, "Oh, but what if I offend them? What if they feel like they're unwelcome? Because I don't want them to feel unwelcome because I really want them there, but I'm trying to balance it with my downtime and I work myself up in knots." And there is no offense taken because you can say, and it's not even no, you just say, "This is what works for me." And they're like, "Sweet, that works."
Or others just simply ignore, because if they're gonna be nuanced and not clear in what they're suggesting, let it go over your head, I'm using, parentheses, and just move on. "Oh, so how are
Yeah.
you?"
So I think this is
Change
sort
the
of getting
subject.
to the clash. And
Mm,
I think what happens is when you think saying no is a rejection or a bad thing, people who are part of the ask culture, they do feel presumptuous or they do feel pushy because they're saying, "Can I borrow your private jet?" or even your lawnmower, or saying, "Can I come over?" or saying, "Can you do this thing?" or "Can you take this thing on?" And when you've grown up in guest culture, your assumption is they're only asking because they assume a yes. And you then feel really pressured to say yes because you don't have a concept of it's fine to say no as easily.
mm, I think this is where, and I have been in a number of mum groups as my children have grown up, and quite often I will find wives complaining, that their husbands don't do enough around the house, and I'm just saying in certain instances that would be, there would have been a an unclear or vague comment about the washing machine's done or the dishwasher's done, and you're burning eyeballs in the back of their heads being like, "So do it." And, I just think that can be a really interesting dynamic in a partnership as well, and gendered, because, men do feel freer to ask directly, therefore, perhaps are more comfortable in an ask situation and don't pick up on nuanced statements that women, have had to protect because of, risk of seeing demanding or bossy, as an example.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that dynamic would probably play out a bit and probably play out at work. Like when we talk a lot about the power of no and getting more comfortable saying no, like I think that's kind of the other side of the coin to this of if you are raised, and I think this is really cultural as well. We've run this workshop in front of a lot of cultures where it's much more um, communal focused. And so you actually always help each other and offer and participate. And then you're thrown into a work culture, which is largely sort of a Western directive sort of, and then you end up taking on way more of the load. So I think there's all sorts of little crossovers here. Um, but it does it and I think on the flip side, so ask people seem pushy. And I feel like I like this is a real light bulb for me because I'm often in this pickle and I see it as boundaries, but I don't think it is boundaries where someone's in quotation marks not taking the hint. And they're probably just thinking, what hint is there to take? Like, I just want to know one way
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
other.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't, and so it's like kind of passive aggressive, or it's sort of what we've talked about with ghosting culture of that last minute, like, sorry, something's come up, or sorry, I'm sick. It's a way of avoiding just a direct no because we feel really uncomfortable saying no. And so, yeah, I think it ties into a lot of somewhat problematic outcomes for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking of ghosting culture is an interesting byproduct as a result, like this inability or bravery, I suppose, to say no and have boundaries. But on the flip side, I was thinking of we interviewed Catherine Wilson, who is shoe, the footwear goddess, shoe guru, Catherine Wilson. I've never owned a pair actually. Do you own any Catherine Wilsons?
No, but I'm
No.
like, you know me, I'm not a like clothes, shoes, makeup gal, but I do know a bunch of people who just like dream of her shoes.
This was someone, by the way, 7 years ago, I would open a desk drawer at the office, and Nat would have 6 high heels, in a desk drawer.
Yeah, and they're still in my museum closet because I don't wear any of them.
Pink, green, you name it. Anyway, um, okay, so, Catherine Wilson, her main we have kind of we really dig into a key theme as part of our expert interviews in Powersuit, and one of hers was just say what you need out loud and show so she, in a sense, was practicing asking out loud, maybe not initially asking for help, but it translated to that. So she started by expressing her dreams, her goals, and her needs out loud, which got her comfortable with hearing it. And then it made it far easier for her. So in business, she would do this. She would say, I want to open um, a pop up shop in Queenstown. I want to have a presence in Queenstown. And she would just say it and she would do it out loud. And then the more she said it, the more she got comfortable asking an advisor, I need your help to open a pop up store in Queenstown. And so I think that's an interesting bridge. And I didn't want to serve up a solution, but I just like that. What are some baby steps rather than just immediately going, oh gosh, 30, 40, 50 years of conditioning, and we all of a sudden have to be direct communicators? Like, let's start small, you know?
Well, and is our assumption here that direct communication is better? Like, it feels like a smart assumption. Like, it does feel like
Caveat. I think there are caveats and it's nuanced, isn't it? Because we still have to and I think, this Carly Dober from Enriching Lives Psychology, Carly, we need a slightly better name for your business, Enriching Lives I don't know. Anyway, her
we'll just
stance
do
and
some
research
rebranding.
her stand she's done a lot of research on communication, and her stance is, look, direct communication, is better. There are strengths from an ask culture. There's a shared understanding. There's probably an efficiency in terms of getting, to an outcome, and it's less open to interpretation, and when things are muddied and, not interpreted well, we get miscommunication, we get conflict. But, she did say that guesses exist for a reason, because guess culture can reduce conflict, it can protect relationships, and it can honor other cultures, and so I think it's a nuanced thing. You have to, figure out what works best for that scenario, for that relationship, for that dynamic.
Yeah, I agree, and I was just thinking, like, we quite like a traffic light system or such like, where I think that ask culture does rely on a genuine belief that a no is okay. So, like, if you are saying, "Hey, can I help with this project?" and someone saying no is not acceptable to you, then it's also not really an ask either because you're kind of giving an order. So, I wonder if there is like a phrase that we could use, and I feel like we say it a lot at Powersuit, where like I even the other day I kind of did I it's not really even an ask. I sent an invoice to one of our partners and I just a couple of members wanted to renew and I just said to them, "I'm doing this to take load off you, like admin load of back and forth. If you have any problems with that, please just like tell me and this is the only reason I'm doing it like this." And I just wonder if there is a way of saying, "Can I borrow your lawnmower? Please say no if for any reason it doesn't work for you." And just giving people permission to say no when we're asking. Because I think if your preference is asking, then I think you also have to be open and actively open to a no. Or in other cases, like I'd really love it if you could do this. And it means a lot to me. You were effectively really pushing for a yes. So I think we should separate those things out.
Yeah, I like that, and I was just thinking of a recent instance where I asked in an indirect way. I could have been direct, but was speaking to potential, someone very well connected, and I said to her, "Look, we love to do these expert interviews, looking for fabulous humans. If you're aware of anyone, in your network. And it was so interesting because I appreciated she was really busy, she's running a business, and I did the classic, like, don't wanna bother her, but I know she's also well connected, but not only did she say, "Yes, I've got a few people in mind, but equally, I would love to be interviewed as well," and I thought, "Oh, great." So it probably felt passag, but I thought it was like an entry point into her networks, and then she volunteered. So that was a little bit I didn't mean to make it so sneaky, but it was 3 for 1. I don't know.
Whereas it'd be interesting if you just come out and said, would you or anyone in your network like to? It's totally fine if you're too busy. You know, like, that could have it'd be interesting to know. But I do yeah, I feel like there is something and I think your example of especially gendered and of course, hashtag not all everyone, but if you are finding yourself in a lot of dynamics where you are feeling misunderstood or that your hints aren't being picked up on, this might be a good nudge to go, maybe try a little bit more directness, and like everything, it's a continuum, like, I think a hard no is probably never gonna feel that comfortable for people. So there's always gonna be a little bit of padding and a little bit of kindness wrapped around it, and it's just maybe just introducing a little bit more directness. So maybe rather than going, "Oh, that rubbish stinks," going, "Hey, can you put the rubbish out?" Or if that's, a thing that you are always having to remind someone to do that you don't want to, then, "Hey, can we have a chat about how we organize this?"
Mm-mm. I think in that scenario, I think of the emotional energy, that is comes as a result of not being direct, this like she should have and they could have and I would have and whatever. But I also think of the mental energy of asking for a favor when a comment is dropped via text. Kyle showed me a text the other day and he said, "I'm pretty sure this is what this person is asking of us." And I said, "No, maybe I don't know. I don't think so." And so that person's expending energy on hoping they get the right answer if that was what was the intention. And Kyle and I are spending a lot of energy on trying to read between the lines and figure it out. And I think not only is it your mental energy, but it's possibly the other person's as well, because they're trying to figure out exactly what you meant by that. And should I care? And do I not care? And how do I navigate this thing? So I think so. And then on the asker side, if you do find yourself very direct and an asker, and it's mind boggling to you to be in a culture that simply isn't, um, there would be a few suggestions there is to think about again that nuance and the timing. Think about possibly where, again, as always, put yourself in that person's shoes, and think about you may not want to put them on the spot, so you may want to, like you said, soften. They could equally soften their language in terms
Well,
of
and
giving
yeah.
permission.
'Cause
Mm.
I feel like a way to do that, let's go back to the very excellent private jet example. "Can I borrow your private jet to go to Hawaii?" Puts a lot of onus on the other person for a yes, no, or this is how much it costs to go, and, like, they have to really front foot the terms of what that might look like. So if you are an asker and you can show thoughtfulness or consideration by saying, "Hey, I'd really like to go to Hawaii in your private jet. Do you rent it out to people and how much would it cost to take it?" And they then are in a position to come back and go, just take it. And honestly, if you're in that position right now, we wouldn't say no. Actually, we would. Do we want to fly and approach you? I don't know. You're kind of front footing the sorts of things the questions they may have or the information they might want to know before saying yes. And an example of this in a smaller scale is we hear a lot these days, and we're involved in this a lot around women being asked to speak. Can you come and talk at this thing? And there's no mention of compensation. So when we get asked that, we're put in a position to kind of go, are you planning to pay us for our work? Are you planning to not pay us? We now need to come back and ask all these questions that make us feel uncomfortable. Whereas if someone asks us, hey, can you come and speak at our event? We don't have a budget, or here's our budget. Does that work for you? You have shown a lot more consideration with your ask. So I feel like that's the nuance there is like, it's sometimes saying yes or no and expecting the other person to have to do that is actually putting a lot of onus on them to, like, figure it all out. So maybe the tweak there is to take on some of that work before
Yeah.
you are.
Yep, agree with all of the above. I'm just thinking of a couple of, again, like, drawing all sorts of weird scenarios from my life, but I'm like, I think there's a bonus scenario, right? Where you're like, I'm probably not gonna get the private jet. I'm gonna pay for flights to, Hawaii anyway, but if I let them know I'm going to Hawaii, you never know, I'm going to Hawaii anyway. Like, I just am like, there's instances where there's bonus culture. So I might be going, I don't know, to Croatia in a couple years, and I might just mention to my friends in Croatia, "We're coming, it'd be great to see you." Bonus culture might be they might invite us for a night to stay, I don't know, but it's okay if they don't. Like, I think there's scenarios where I'm like, "I don't have to, I don't need to," but that would be a bonus culture.
I love that you're justifying guessing because it's like that's kind of the point either way, is that it's okay to say no.
But what if I didn't want to stay there? But if they asked, it's okay.
I don't want to, but if you ask, I do.
I mean, that's what I mean, it's the bonus. Like,
I think this is
it's
a
not.
really great example of why it is very ingrained because an asker would just say, "Well, if I wanna stay there, I'll ask," and it's a bonus if they say yes.
Maybe I don't know any askers. Do you know any askers? Like, out and out
I
askers?
think it's not really a New Zealand trait. It's I do know, I know in the past I had I was pulled aside by a South African, coworker who said, "Am I really rude?" And I was like, "No." But then I am pretty direct, so I don't find like yeah, I like clear communication because I don't know, it's like I'm probably South African, I don't know. And I but he said a lot of people found him really rude because he probably was an asker, amongst other things, more direct, more clear, all of that sort of
And that
stuff.
is a personal brand thing. Like, people like to work with people they like and like to do things with people they like. So that, yeah, tricky, yeah, tricky. It's
Yeah,
a
but I
minefield.
think it's probably American culture, probably a lot more ask. Canadian, New Zealand, probably the extreme opposite. Germans probably, I mean, stereotyping here, probably more ask. I would say Japanese, probably yes, based on some some of the unwritten
I
rules.
think Swedish as well. Again, somehow my reels, have equally included Japan, but Sweden. I'm like, "How did that happen?" And we've had a thing on small talk. We are wrapping up, everyone, don't worry. But, we had a thing on small talk where they hate small talk, which then you leads you to believe that they would be direct, right? But no, they just like deep conversation, but they are also a guessing culture, and there's so much nuance in language. Like, a comment you might get means something totally different in Sweden as well. So, oh god, that would make me
I
nervous too.
remember this is a, very last tangent, but, I'm obsessed with Hamish and Andy, and I was listening to a lot of their podcasts. They're Australian comedians. I find them really funny, but I also like their business, their way they build brands and community. I think they're really clever. But they interviewed Hillary Clinton once, and she said, "Oh, if you come to America, you have to come over for a barbecue," which is an exact example of this sort of in reverse. And they as part of their comedy act, were like, "We now have your ask on record inviting us to your house," which of course she meant is like a really polite American thing to say. And so then they follow up and there was this whole thing about her having to be held to account for her invite to have a barbecue at her house in America. And I think those are just like and again, when we are thinking about diversity in the workplaces and all the different ways all our brains work, we add so much complexity for people to
Yeah, I
have to
know. Uh,
understand, and
I'm
so,
doing
yeah,
it.
I think
I'm doing a timeout only because, Nat, that is a whole other podcast. No, 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 it's a whole other podcast because last night Adeline came home, bumped into someone at the gym who was, an ex, and the ex was like, "We need to hang out." And Adeline was like, "Is that legit? Is it not legit?" And there's this whole because you know how often you bump into someone, we must go for a drink. So timeout on that one. We're gonna do a whole other podcast
yeah,
on
okay, because I have a
communication
lot
and
of thoughts on that too,
people
yeah.
offering and suggesting when it's actually just a pleasantry, like
Which is so
Mrs.
weird, isn't it?
Clinton.
We're
Yeah.
so odd.
Anyway, great.
We're
Thanks,
so odd.
everyone. Powersuit.com. Come and get in touch. And episode 150, by the way.
Our
So that's
ask
pretty
to
cool.
you, our ask
Yes. What
is
is our
write a
ask?
comment because it might spark another
Okay.
podcast, or give us a
Figure out how
five-star
to write
review.
a comment. Yeah.
And
Or
in this
what?
case, you're not allowed to say no, just do the five-star review.
Yeah, great. Review, comment, if you can figure out how to do a comment. I was about to log into Spotify and look. But anyway, nonetheless, do it all. Take care, everyone. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.